Dodo Peak was a launch title on Apple Arcade in September last year, back when we all still naively thought that for the foreseeable future we'd be outdoors with our phones a lot. It's finally broken free of its iOS shackles though, and it arrived on the Switch eShop this week. It's a good job it did too, because while it's a fairly basic game in the grand scheme of things, it's also an entertaining one that'll keep you busy for a while. The general concept feels like what you'd get if you took the arcade classic Cubert and based it on rescue missions instead. The world is made up of cubes and you play as a dodo who can hop from cube to cube. Each stage has a set number of baby dodo eggs dotted around, and your aim is to head out, find each egg, at which point it'll hatch, and then escort the babies back to the starting point where they'll be safe. Obviously it's not as easy as that. Each stage is also inhabited by a variety of enemies, and one touch will put your dodo on its arse. That's hardly a groundbreaking gameplay mechanic of course, but there's a twist. Each time you hatch an egg and start trailing a baby behind you, the baby will also be vulnerable. You may be able to slip past an enemy, but if a baby behind you hits the enemy instead, that still counts. You still need to start the stage again. This gets even trickier in later stages, where you're gathering 4, 5, maybe even more eggs. You can't drop some off and come back for the rest. You need to collect them all in one run, meaning by the time you're heading to the exit you've got a big long string of babies behind you that you have to guide away from danger. Thankfully there aren't any lives in this game. You get as many tries as you like. As the stages get more complex and the number of eggs increases, you'll welcome this, because it means you get the freedom to experiment with different routes through each stage. What seems like the most obvious path through a stage may be deceiving, because the last part could be trickier to navigate when you've got a bunch of babies behind you. Sometimes it's worth making your way through the harder bits first, and saving the easier section until later, when it's easier to get past with a long tail. There are also a couple of power-ups you can collect to make things a bit easier. The watermelon makes your dodo move extremely quickly, which is useful when you're trying to beat the level within a certain time, while the sort of radish looking thing makes you invincible for a brief period, letting you kill enemies and stride through obstacles unharmed. There are 60 stages in total, split into 6 different worlds. Each world has its own different environment, beach, snow, the usual sort of thing, as well as its own enemies, which have their own movement patterns. Crab follow your own movements, monkeys always move in your direction, you know the drill. If it wasn't clear that this is originally a mobile game, the fact that each stage scores you out of 3 stars should make it obvious. You get 1 star for simply beating the level, but the others are given for a variety of tasks which are different in each stage. It could be clearing it within a set time, collecting an optional red gem along the way, wiping out all the enemies in a stage or what have you. Along the way you'll find coins lying around. Collecting them will increase your overall coin tally, which can then be spent on different dodo outfits, which in turn affect the speed your dodo runs at. Some of them aren't even dodos, which feels like sacrilege, but there you go. It feels like the sort of thing that would have been ripe for microtransactions had this been a standard free-to-play mobile game instead of an Apple Arcade one, but instead here you just unlock them through good old-fashioned hard work like back in the day. Now, nothing I've told you here will have you peeling your face off and screaming that you never knew such originality was possible. If you're looking for a brand new experience that will change the gaming landscape, you might want to look as far away as you can. Dodo Peak is well-trodden territory, and anyone who's ever played Cubert, or Frogger, or Crossy Road, or anything like that will know the script here. But you know something? It doesn't really matter. Not every game has to reinvent the wheel, and at £7.49 there's enough here to keep you busy for long enough to get your money's worth, especially if you're the sort of person like me who absolutely has to 3-star every level. It's not perfect. Sometimes the dodo moves a bit sluggish, which can on occasion lead to a frustrating death. Unlocking faster dodos alleviates this a bit, but it's never completely gone. There's also a slight random element to the enemy placement at times. It's not noticeable enough to make it completely different every time you play a level, but it's subtle enough to make it harder for you to use trial and error to perfect your route on more difficult stages. And it makes beating your best time for each stage slightly more of a luck-based affair too. In general though, I had a fun time with this one, working my way through its 60 stages and cursing it upside down every now and then when I couldn't quite nail the 3 stars on one. It's reasonably cheap, it's pretty cheerful, and ultimately you could do a lot worse. Thanks for watching this review. Please do visit tiredoldhack.com for more gaming goodness, and do the usual like and subscribe and hitting the bell, all the usual shenanigans you're supposed to do on YouTube. Cheers guys, bye bye.